Hey everyone, Mr. Wineland here. We are starting chapter 5 today. We're getting into section 1. We're going to talk about Mycenaeans and then the Mycenaean Greeks, and then we're going to kind of get into a little bit about the history of the early Greek culture, and then will help us set up when we talk about Athens and Sparta. So, um, as you learned, we talked about the Minoans. They lived mostly in Crete. They did not live in the mainland, but the Mycenaeans mostly were an ancient Greek civilization around this region of the world. Eventually, would invade the Minoans. We're going to talk a little bit about that civilization. As we move forward, we're going to talk about Sparta. We're going to talk about Athens, and so which is right up here. And so we'll talk also too about Macedonia. We'll get more into that later another time. But we talked about Minoan civilization, how it lived in Crete around 3000 BC, lasted nearly about 2,000 years. Minoan ships sailed over the Aegean Sea and established in certain colonies and sailed back and forth from Crete. But in ancient Greece consisted mainly of mountainous peninsula jutting out into the Mediterranean Sea. It also included about 2,000 islands along the Aegean and Ionian seas. So a lot of different colonies there around ancient Greece. A lot of physical geography around Greece, and was built into their customs and traditions. Um, Greeks did not live on a land, but around a sea. Basically, the sea was kind of their life. The Aegean Sea, the Ionian Sea, the neighboring Black Sea. These were all a part of Greek and their culture. The seaways were the Greeks' way of travel. So sea travel was good for trade. It allowed them to trade and survive throughout this time as they were looking for precious metals and usable farmland. We see the rugged mountains did cover about three-fourths of ancient Greece, from the northwest to the southeast of the Balkan Peninsula. Mountains would divided the land into a number of different regions, significantly influenced Greek political life. Instead of a single government, Greeks had their own little communities, and which we're going to talk about later on. But if you look here, as there's a lot of mountains in these regions, so you see a lot of the mountains here in this yellow color. But you see that there's the little farmland for them, but each little state or country was its own little city state. And so Athens was their own little country. So was Sparta, and we're going to talk about their own little community during that time. And so, um, we see that most Greeks gave their loyalty to their local communities in ancient times. Uneven terrain also made land transportation difficult, so very few roads, a little bit of some dirt paths. Much of the land itself was stony, and small parts arable or suitable for farming. So tiny fertile valleys covered Greece around this time. Climate was the third important environmental influence of Greek civilization. Climate would vary from time to time, temperatures averaging 48 degrees in the winter and 80 degrees in the summer. We see ancient times, these moderate temperatures supported outdoor life for many Greeks in their public events. Everything here in yellow for your definition for the Mycenaeans is all here. So some of the Greeks that settled in the mainland around 2000 BC were known as the Mycenaeans. The Mycenaeans built a lot of small kingdoms, often fought against each other. Name comes from the fortress they built on Mycenae, which was their largest city at that time. What we know about the Mycenaeans is they considered the first Greeks who spoke this form of Greek language. Earliest kingdoms owed much to the Minoans, but we do know that the Mycenaeans are given the credit as the first Greeks. They did trade with the Minoans at one point in time, copied some of their writing and own system, but eventually the Mycenaeans tweaked it, and their language would carry on as they conquered Crete. Society dominated intense competition, a lot of warfare, powerful kings. Mycenaean kings tax trade, farming, build palaces. We see that some downfall to the Mycenaean strength. Some of their strengths. We'll get to their downfall shortly. To show off strength, Mycenaeans built great monuments, Lion's Gate, king's constant quest for power and glory inspired legends. We see mostly the Trojan War is one of those. The war supposedly involved early Greeks led by Mycenaean, who fought a powerful city called Troy, what is now Turkey. We don't know too much about what started it. Helen of Troy. Um, Helen was supposed to be, I believe, the wife of one of the great Mycenaean kings here. Eventually made its way into Troy, which is in Turkey. And Helen of Troy basically was there and did not want to leave Troy. And so the Greeks went to go get her back and also conquer that region, depending on how you go about the story. Whether it happened or not, there are ruins that are believed that have been found in 1870s excavations conducted in northwestern Turkey by German archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann. Basically suggested that the stories of the Trojan War might have been based on the real cities, people, and events. So we don't know exactly if Homer's tale is accurate, but there's possible that there was a Trojan War. The war played a part in Mycenaean civilization, as the drought, famine, and the end of trade sped up their downfall. By the end of 1100s BC, Mycenaean cities mostly in ruins. The Dark Ages would follow, and Greek civilization was disappearing. But around 12 BC, we see sea raiders attacked and burned many Mycenaean cities. According to tradition, a new group of people, the Dorians, moved in into war-torn countryside, spoke of dialect of Greek, and may have been distant relatives of the Bronze Age Greeks. We see that the Dorians were far less advanced than that of the Mycenaeans. Eventually, the economy would collapse. Most important to historians, Greeks appear to have temporarily lost a lot of their art and writing during the Dorian Age. No written record exists from the 400-year period between 1150 and 750 BC. As a result, it's little known about this portion of time of Greek history. What we do know is we have a lot of legends and myths about the Greeks when studying them. Myths are stories that are told to explain natural phenomena, events of distance past. It was kind of their way of the Greeks being able to explain nature and why things happened. Greek myths were basically helped people cope with the world and how they should live. Your answer number 3 is down here. Ancient Greeks believed in hundreds of gods, goddesses, and each governed one aspect of nature of life. Example: Apollo controlled movement of the sun, sister Artemis, the moon. Greeks believed gods were there to protect their city states in exchange for proper rituals and sacrifices. That's why Athens is named after the goddess of Athena, the goddess of wisdom. There are 12 gods and goddesses that are particularly influential in Greek life. These 12 lived in what is known as Mount Olympus. There's actually a big mountain called Mount Olympus, and above that, high above that, is where they lived. The Olympian gods thought to have great power, though not perfect. The myths say gods flawed, often unpredictable, loved, hated, argued, made mistakes, got jealous, played tricks on each other. Worship. Almost all Greeks worshiped the same gods. Each polis claimed one god or goddess for special protector. So, like Athens, like I said, chose Athena, the god of wisdom. Your answer number 2. Some locations were sacred to all Greeks. Certain sacred locations, Delphi, sacred to all Greeks. Priestess of Apollo were thought to receive visions of the future. Olympia, every 4 years, the Greeks assembled form an Olympic Games where athletes composed against each other in different competitions that were there to honor the gods, which is answer number 1. There's a lot of stories about the gods, like Hercules and Theus. We see is that the Greeks had told many myths about their heroes, used to teach about the Greeks about how to be, what kind of people they should be. Some heroes like Hercules had to godlike strength, but renowned through all of Greece. Others like Theseus, who killed the Minotaur of Crete, famous for chiefly in home cities. Heroes killed monsters, made discoveries, found cities, talked with the gods in equal terms. Examples inspired individuals with whole city states achieved great things. Hubris, great pride, brought many heroes into tragic ends. um, served as lessons to overstretch their abilities. So, but this is the early ancient Greeks, and we're going to get into a little bit more into the certain civilizations that would be created following the Mycenaeans, and so kind of talk more about those cultures. See you in section 2.